Okuyorum şu anda.
First of all, we live in a materialistic world. We value material things more.
Then at this point, I should accept the presence of an author.
I disagree with your allegory. I think your point of view is non-secular.
It would be accepting the theory that incapable atoms are continuously creating something new.
This would be only a series of possibilities, wouldn't it?
To speak about possibilities, a group of possibilities should exist. I should accept the continued existence of endless impossibilities.
I am thinking of an answer to that.
What do you do? Are you a student or are you working?
I am a college student.
Do you believe in God?
I am an agnostic. I didn't grow up in a religious family. Of course, they were Muslims like most of the people in this country, but I was never forced to believe. By the time I found myself asking, do I really need something to feel comfortable? Since I haven't found an answer to this, I am still an agnostic. I thought, do I really need it? Because all these are need-based.
So you found yourself an agnostic, right? You know, knowledge is dependent on the known. Personal opinions cannot change certain facts. Is the non-existence of the Creator proven because you don't see Him with your eyes?
Does it? The answer absolutely depends on your feelings.
Would you change your mind if we went on a logical deduction and reach a conclusion that makes sense to you?
I already don't have a clear idea, so I call myself an agnostic. I try to be objective.
Then let's talk about logic and proof, and let's see what you will say about this.
Okay?
No attributes can be unclaimed in this universe. If there is an existing attribute or if an attribute is needed, we must give it to somebody. Suppose you are an author and you publish new books one after another. Imagine people come to me showing the books and asking, who wrote this? Would it be reasonable if I answered, of course, it is the ink who wrote it? It wouldn't. Why? Here, the ink is only a tool, right?
Yes.
Here, the ink is a tool. We say there is an author who writes in ink and continuously publishes books. Why? Because the attribute here cannot remain unclaimed. Also, the ink cannot be the owner of the attribute. Why? To publish a book, some attributes needed as life, knowledge, power, will. Naturally, we say if the ink doesn't have these attributes, there should be an author who has them. Do you agree?
Of course.
Now, similarly, when we look at the universe, we see intertwined books. We can think of people, animals, all living things. When I look at the universe, the book of the universe, I see a fresh book being written continuously, again and again. When you look at a mother, you read the chapter on compassion. When you look at food and drinks on the earth, we can read the chapter about generosity. Various disciplines at universities or different departments at hospitals show the comprehensiveness and complexity of this book. For instance, when we look at a seed, we can see the summary of an enormous tree in such a tiny seed. Also, the eggs of most animals have a summary of information. Also, when we look at a single human being, we see that the human DNA hosts the summary of man in its 3.5 billion letters. When we consider that there are thousands of cells in human beings, even one single person has much more knowledge than the richest library in the world. As we mentioned, the continuous writing of books at the beginning, we see that the books of the universe are being written again and again. Mothers give birth to 350,000 babies every day. Brand new 350,000 books. Also, thousands of animals are delivered every day. We see brand new written books of animals. In every second, 50 million of our cells are being written, renewed, and refreshed again and again. That means we are talking about a book that is being refreshed continuously. As we agreed before that, we need an author, not the ink, to write a book. Somebody living, having power and will and knowing everything so that he can write the book. Samely, shouldn't we need an author to write this book of universe again and again by using atoms as ink? An author who possesses the attributes of knowledge, will, power, and life? I mean, shouldn't there be a creator? Neither the ink nor the atoms have these attributes. We accepted the presence of the author of the ink. Wouldn't it be reasonable to accept the author of the atom used as ink? A creator?
Well, whether it sounds reasonable or not, it is a personal issue. I don't think it can be restricted to reason. It depends on free will. Let's look at this author theory. First, we live in a materialistic world. We value material things more than spiritual things.
Does it show that your point of view is correct?
I couldn't understand your question.
Not seeing the author is not proof of his non-existence. If the ink lacks capacity, we say there must be an author even if I don't know him. Here, we live in a materialistic world. Since atoms lack this capability, naturally there must be an author who has these attributes.
I am thinking of an answer to that. Please wait for a while. I think your point of view is non-secular. Of course, there must be somebody to write these books, but should this person, how can I say, this person needn't be a divine one. Don't you have the slightest hope that all these are about a series of possibilities? Let's not call it hope. Don't you see the slightest possibility?
I should see a capability in this to say that there is a possibility. This has no capability since there is a continued creation and regeneration. I must accept the existence of an author. We agreed that the ink didn't write the book. We didn't consider any possibilities, right?
Of course.
Of course. Why? This is clear-cut. Because the ink doesn't have that capability. There isn't a possibility to talk about it. It's obvious there is an author. Well, then, is the book more comprehensive? Or you who has much more knowledge than the richest library of the world?
I disagree with what you have said. This should be among the possibilities. Some people think all these are just possibilities. This also sounds reasonable to me.
How do you find it reasonable that the birth of 3 babies every second is controlled by atoms that lack knowledge, will, power, and compassion? Don't you contradict yourself by accepting impossibilities every second?
I think you are playing with words. You say it was written. You are using passive. I am being written, and somebody externally is helping me. Thanks, I'm grateful. But I am talking about the possibility of being itself.
How can it create itself while it lacks the capability? Imagine you have a hat in your hand. You put a piece of white paper into it. Do you expect a rabbit to come out of it? We don't. It's clear. Why? Because the paper doesn't have the potential to create the rabbit, right? No, absolutely not. Does the hat have the capability? No, it doesn't. Then we will say there is something behind it all. We'll look for who is behind it all. I say the atom doesn't have the capability of creating a human being, a peacock, or a tree. It is blind and deaf, unable to see or hear. It doesn't have a will, power, or life. It is unaware of its own needs. So I will say, as I seek for somebody behind the hat and an author behind the book, I will look for an author who uses atoms as the ink for creation. It is more reasonable.
We are talking about a universe 13 to 14 billion years old, and I am looking for the slightest possibility. I am looking from a mathematical dimension.
You say, I'm looking for the slightest possibility. Firstly, when we go to the beginning of the universe, the matter is not present. We are talking about zero volume and infinite density, where some sort of will intervene the nothingness to create something. To talk about possibility, we need a group of probabilities, but no probabilities exist in nothingness. So it becomes impossible to make a calculation. Even now, if there aren't the atoms that make the creation around, I had to accept continued impossibilities, because they don't stop. Nothing stops. Thousands of living organisms come to a being every second. Something happens, and somebody does something. Action shows the presence of a doer. The doer should have the capability to realize this action. If I talk about possibilities or probabilities, we should accept a continued creation by incapable atoms, and that's impossible. And this creation is not just for one time.
I'm thinking of an answer to that. What can I say? I know, I am repeating myself. There are living organisms, all right? They can't remain static. They are dynamic.
Who is doing this? That's what I'm asking. Who is the doer if it is not the atom?
Who is the doer? Good question. Of course, I don't know so much about it. I am not as knowledgeable as you. What I mean? You are talking about the possibility of the presence of a creator, but I am talking about the probability of the absence of a creator.
Think of a foolish, blind, and deaf car driver. Is it possible for him to drive from here to Gaziantep?
No, it isn't possible.
It's not possible. Why? Because he doesn't have those skills. He doesn't see or hear. He is mindless. He can't keep the car on the correct route among the numerous alternatives. What I say is, atoms have none of the attributes of seeing, hearing, or will. If atoms always keep the car on the right track in every living organism, there must be an upper will that controls them. I want to talk about a verse from the Holy Quran. Your point of view might reach a different dimension. One of the surahs of the Holy Quran is called Al-Masad. It's about Abu Lahab. He was one of the uncles of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The surah foretells that Abu Lahab would die as an unbeliever. It says he will not believe. Here, we should ask the following questions. How can a man foretell the future, and how can it become true? It becomes true, and Abu Lahab dies as an unbeliever. The second point is, when this verse was revealed, Abu Lahab was a strong and healthy man. He died 7 years later. How can a man know whether somebody will die as a believer or not 7 years later? The third point is, to become a believer is quite a strong possibility in this time. Even the biggest enemies of Islam became Muslims. Look at Abu Sufyan. Look at Khalid ibn al-Walid, the great commander. And even Wahshi, the killer of Hamza. They all became believers. It shows to become a believer was normal at this age. But the verse says that Abu Lahab will not believe. 7 years later, he dies as an unbeliever. This was the third point. The fourth point is, after the revelation of the verse foretelling Abu Lahab's end, he could announce that he was a believer too. If he had done so, he would have denied the verse. He could have denied the holy message. But he couldn't. He couldn't even utter a single word and say, I am a believer. How can a man foretell about these events? That means the one who revealed this book is the one we are looking for, the creator of the universe. He knows about the unknown, the future, and the past, and all times. He knows what is in your heart. A human can't write this holy book. It also shows that the Holy Quran is from God. Similarly, we can find our Creator, Allah, in this way.
At this point, I have nothing to say. I will keep on researching.
Okay then, think about the things we have discussed today. Please feel free to contact us if you find yourself researching. We are ready to help. Pleased to meet you.
Pleased to meet you too. Thank you for the interview.
It was a nice talk. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.